Hey folks, it's Viejo here. The video you're about to see here is one that I'm reposting from my previous channel that had been deleted. So if you've seen this video, feel free to bypass it and move along to something else. Won't hurt my feelings at all. But I have had some requests to repost some of the videos from that other channel that are not likely to get channel strikes against them. So we're going to do that. And at the beginning of each of those videos, you'll see this very same prologue, so you'll know. All right. Happy shooting, casting, and reloading to everybody. Catch you later. Hey guys, Viejo here. In a previous video, you saw how I'd been working with this Hi-Skor 700X powder from Hodgdon. Not a new powder, just new to me. I hadn't used it much. Well, I hadn't used it at all before. And so I've been doing some testing, kind of having some fun with that. And we had worked through some loads for 45 ACP using several different bullets. And now I'm going to be working with some 9mm loads. We're going to be using the Glock 34 as the test bed and with a couple of different bullets. This is the Extreme 115 grain plated bullet. Extreme has some load data for their bullets in their little manual that you can download for about $5. It doesn't have a ton of stuff, but it does have a few loads, including some for 700X. Not for this specific one, but they do have a 700X load for their 115 grain heavy plated bullet, very similar to this one. Same weight, same dimensions, and same suggested COAL, which is 1.15 inches, and that's what I'm going to be using. I'm also going to be testing with this bullet. So this is the Lee 356-120-SWC. Very nice 9mm round. Comes in at 124 grains for me as cast and powder coated. And I shoot a lot of these. And the mold is a great one. I got a 6-cavity mold for that one, and it's a sweet mold. It runs really, really well. And I thought today that I'd show you a little bit more about how I prep the brass for these kinds of testing that I like to do. I mentioned a little bit about it in the video I did for 45 ACP, but basically it goes like this. I'll go through all my range brass, pick out a bunch of the same head stamp. This stuff here happens to be Blazer. For no particular reason. I could have picked Winchester or PMC or whatever brass that I had available to me, and I'm going to uniform this brass. And the reason I'm going to do that is I want to eliminate as many variables as I can when I go to the range to see how this powder performs. So I want to see how consistently this stuff is going to perform at various load levels, and I don't want any inconsistencies to be a result of brass that was all different lengths and different head stamps and so forth. So we're going to uniform up this brass. And by uniforming, what I mean is I'm going to make sure that it's all the same length. It's not really necessary to trim it to length. If you've got a bunch of brass that's all the same head stamp already, you can just pick a length that you want to use and go through all your stuff until you pick out enough for your test that's all the same length. These I did trim, and or I'm going to trim rather. They've been sized is what I meant to say. So we're going to trim them to length, and that length is going to be 0.748 inches. The SAMI spec is from 0.744 to 0.754. So 0.748, somewhere in the middle there. And it wasn't hard at all to find enough brass in my selection of range brass that I had to get all the same head stamp, a little bit longer than 0.748 so that I could trim it to square up that case mouth a little bit. And we're also going to uniform the primer pockets. So I'm going to show you how I do that. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and uniform the primer pockets. We're going to use our power drill. And this is just the primer pocket uniformer off of my Lyman Power Center. Or any of them will work. If you got an RCBS unit or whatever you've got, that's just a standard small pistol primer pocket uniforming tool. But what makes it work in here is this piece, and that's a Redding piece that they sell, and I think they call that the power tool adapter. But that's going to screw onto your uniforming tool like this. That's that 8x32 thread, and allow you to use that in your power drill. So we'll just put that aside, and this is pretty easy. We're just gonna stick this up here. We got a little tray here to collect any shavings. Some of these will take more than others. All right, so I'll just finish the rest of those up, and then we'll come back. All right, you don't need to see all of this. I got a few pieces of brass in here that's close to the right length, but we're just going to go in here with our Hornady trimmer and trim all of this to the same length. I selected brass that was already close to being right. And of course we'll deburr and chamfer these just a little bit. It doesn't take much. I had a whole bunch of these to do. I'd be on the power machine, but that's not necessary. I'm only going to do a dozen pieces or so. And a guy could just go through and select, you know, from your stash of 9mm stuff, enough of the cases of the same head stamp that are already the length that you want. You know, if you got 1,000 cases and not worry about trimming them as long as they're the same length. But one thing that trimming does is it gives them all a nice square edge here on the case mouth. So we're going to get a nice uniform crimp all the way around. So that's one of the reasons that trimming is helpful. Now don't get me wrong, I don't normally trim my brass for pistol brass. Only when I'm doing these tests like this, the only time that I'm going to do that. It's just not worth the effort the rest of the time. So, and you're not creating a lot of burring here. There's a little bit, but not much, so it doesn't take much to get that off of there. Just a couple of turns like that. That's all we got to do. You don't want to take too much material off of there. We're not trying to make a knife edge. All right, so that's that process. You don't need to see all of these. We'll come back here in a minute with the next step. So the other thing that we're going to do is uniform our brass and bullets by weight. And I purposely went through and uniformed more brass than I needed. I only need 10 rounds, a mag full for the Glock 34. So I uniformed up more than that and went through and then weighed these out. These are all going to be right around 55 grains plus or minus a grain. Okay, so they're pretty close, and you'll find within the same head stamp that they'll vary more than plus or minus a grain as a rule, even for these little 9mm brass. So, but that's close enough. And then for the extreme bullets, these guys will vary somewhere between 14.5 up to almost 115.5 grains. So these are all matched to within 0.3 of a grain. Okay, so we're just about ready to start loading. The next thing that we're going to do is true up our RCBS 1010 scale here. Now, most of the time what folks do is they'll have their points set to 0 over here on the scale, and then come over here and adjust the scale adjustment, the leveling adjustment, until we're lined up directly across here. And I'm sure that that's as good a way as any to do it. But what I'm going to do today is use my check weights to get this zeroed up. And we're going to be loading powder in the 4 grain range. So what I'm going to do is take 4 grains worth of check weights. Those are 2 4-grain weights out of my Lyman beam scale check weight set here. And then I'm going to come over here and set my poise at 4 grains. 3, 4, right, get that lined up. All right, now I'm going to come over here and make my adjustment here, making sure that I'm down low, looking at this straight on. Oop, need to come up just a little bit. Tap that a little bit to get away from any friction. Now I'm lined up exactly. Now I'm pretty satisfied that this scale, when it's leveled out over here, is going to show me 4 grains. Okay. If I'm going to be loading, for example, 3.6 grains, then I would simply put these guys back away and then come over here and back this down now to 3.6 and set my poise there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to scoop up close and then trickle up to exact, and you guys know how that works until we're reading exactly even across here. So that's how I set my scale up using the check weights. Is it any better than just zeroing it out here at first? I don't know. Makes me feel better, I guess. So anyway, that's what we're going to do. I'm not going to show you the loading. I'm going to go ahead and get these loaded up and go shoot them here in a couple days. And then when I get that information all printed out, I'll bring back my other stages that I did and show you the results of the testing that I did with these 2 bullets. Okay, so here on the left is unique. And maybe I can get down there a little tighter and give you a good look at the unique. Okay, it's that flat discoid shaped powder. Most of you guys are probably familiar with that. Fairly bulky. Okay, it fills up your case. And then here's our 700X. Very, very similar to the unique. And you can see 1 or 2 little white flakes in there, and that's there by design. There's not a lot of them, but it does help us to distinguish from unique because, boy, when you put these 2 side by side, it's hard to tell them apart. Okay, they're essentially the same color. The 700X might be a little darker, but they're very similar powders. And that 700X is going to fill your case too, guys. In fact, you start getting up to the max loads on your out of your data books, and you may find that you've got to tap that powder down a little bit. It'd be a very slight compression on some of those max loads. All right, so we're back from the range now, and we've completed the tests with 700X with these 2 bullets. This is the Lee 356-120 TC, and this is the Extreme 115 grain round nose copper plated. So I thought I'd show you the results, and you can see where we got. First, let's take a look at the results from this bullet. This bullet actually comes in at right around 124 grains for me. There's no direct data for that. Any place you go look up for a cast bullet, you're not going to find the Lee mold, even in Lee's book. However, this bullet is a very close copy of the RCBS 9mm-124-CN mold. Very, very close, very similar dimensions. And the Lyman cast bullet and their 50th edition full manual have data for that RCBS bullet with 700X. So that's where we started from. And that data shows a range of 3.5 grains of 700X, and they show a velocity there of 1,030 feet per second, and a max of 3.9 grains, where they were showing 1135 feet per second. So I didn't take it up that far. I actually started a little bit lower because previous testing has shown that I was getting faster velocities than what Lyman was showing. So I tested with 3.2, 3.4, and 3.6 grains of 700X, and I had some pretty good results. I'm going to zoom down here so you can see those numbers a little better. So kind of starting here with 3.2 grains of 700X, 1,059 feet per second, extreme spread of 31, standard deviation of 9.6. Not wonderful, you know, but not bad either. And let me go over here a little bit more. You can see the power factor at 131, if that's of interest to anybody. Then moving up to 3.4 grains, we stepped up a little bit faster to 1,067 feet per second. A little bit better extreme spread, only 27. A little bit better standard deviation as well, as we would expect with a tighter extreme spread. And then over here at 3.6 grains, now we're up to 1,113 feet per second, extreme spread of 23, and a standard deviation of 8.1. And I didn't go farther than that. That's a decent enough velocity. I don't need to go any faster than that. In fact, I may keep this one down closer to this range. I may go at 3.5 and try to run this right close to 1,100 feet per second. That bullet seems to like to go that speed. This is just a random piece of brass I just pulled out of the tray there. Nothing, nothing thrilling here. The brass all looks good. Case mounts are good. No indications of failure to obturate the barrel, or the chamber rather. So that's all good, and I like to look at those cases closely after shooting. I collect them and bring them home, take a good look. So everything looks good. Got my nice Glock signature on that primer, right? Okay, so here's our summary page for the Extreme 115 grain copper-plated round nose bullet. And Extreme does have, as I mentioned earlier in the video, some data for a very similar bullet. They don't have one or a data set for this exact one. They have it for their heavy plate version of this one. Their velocities were different from what I was getting here. They show a max of 4.3 grains, and I was already getting up to close to the max velocity at 4.2 grains. So I had actually loaded a 4.3 grains, but we pulled it and didn't run it because we were getting up too high. So let's take a look down here at the numbers that we got. So 3.6 grains, 1,077 feet per second, extreme spread of 35, and not real thrilling, but not bad. And kind of the same story here at our standard deviation of almost 11. Nothing great, but it's usable. When we stepped up to 3.8, got a real similar extreme spread, increased our velocity by, about 40 feet per second or so. Similar standard deviation, okay, not bad. Here's our power factors. We're a little thin right here, okay. And as we got up into 4.0 and 4.2, our velocity stepped up pretty well. Our extreme spreads came down. So did the standard deviation. But notice that here at 4.2 grains, we're up to 1,187 feet per second. And Extreme does not recommend running these plated bullets at over 1,200. So that I would consider a max load. And that 700X is pretty bulky powder, and at 4.2 grains with that bullet, we don't have any case room left anyway. You're already probably starting to squish that powder a little bit. So that's what we did here. I most likely would run this bullet somewhere again in this range. I might try, 3.9 grains, but to be honest, the difference between 3.9 and 4 is not going to be a whole lot. And that 1150 is plenty hot enough to run that plated bullet, and it did shoot pretty accurately right there. So that's where we got with this bullet. And again, just another reminder, these are the numbers that I got with my Glock 34. Okay, if you go and try to replicate these, you're going to get different results. So don't take it to mean that just because I got this number right here, that's where you'll come up to that number. You might get to that number way down here someplace. All right, so be mindful of that. Be careful when you try to pick up data from anybody, including me, off the internet. Okay, guys, so we'll go ahead and wrap this one up. You saw some results that I got with that Hi-Skor 700X using our Glock 34 here with these two bullets, the Lee 356 120 TC and the Extreme 115 grain round nose copper plated bullets. I could go through, and I probably will test a little bit more with the Hi-Skor with a couple of other 9mm bullets that I like to shoot. But I've come to the conclusion now, after doing it with the 45 ACP and now with this round, that it's a very usable powder. It's real similar to Unique in a lot of ways, not just in appearance. We can use it through a lot of calibers, including shotguns. The price is right on it. It has been available during these tough times. I don't know, I haven't looked for it in a month now, but I did buy an 8-pound keg of it, and I'm going to use it. So I think we'll call that a day. Remember to use that data at your own risk if you want to. Try it, but there is some published data, at least for those two bullets. Okay, Extreme has their little manual, and Lyman's got some too. So there's lots of data out there for 700X. So check your sources. All right, as far as this one goes, that's all she wrote, guys.